and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. So today I am joined with Marisa Moris, who is a spiritual intuitive, clairvoyant channel, and quantum Reiki master teacher. She is the creator and founder of Intuition, where she offers readings, healings, and teachings in mediumship, intuition development, meditation, and Christ-centered New Age studies. She recently came out with a book called Attunement, Align with Your Source, Become Your Creator Self, and Manifest the Life You Love. Marisa, welcome to the Path 11 podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so I did get a chance to read your book. It was really interesting. I like the way that you put it together, and the chapters kind of being different rooms. So we're going to eventually get into that. But what I learned about you was that it looks like some of your path was really ignited by near-death experience that happened during an accident. So I was wondering if you'd like to I don't know if you'd like to start there or give our listeners a little background information about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my journey really did start actually when I found out, after being in a codependent relationship for about 7 years with the boy I fell in love with when I was 16. I finally ended up with him out of high school, and he ended up becoming a drug addict. And so I kind of chased him around and tried to fix him and tried to make him love me and be with me and all that for like a good 4 or 5 years. And I finally got away from that relationship and some chemical abuse issues myself. It was one of those, if you can't beat him, join him type of things with him. And when he passed away, that kind of started my journey into searching for what was on the other side, because he wasn't Christian. I was Christian, but not like hardcore Christian. You know, I went to youth group growing up. We celebrate Christmas and Easter, stuff like that. It was like we went to church maybe 2-3 times a year or something like that. And I never read a Bible, but, it was more like, okay, I'm a Christian. You never went to church. I wonder if you went to heaven. So I kind of tried to, just kind of start searching around, but I was being very careful because I didn't want to read anything outside the Bible, because you're told don't read anything outside the Bible. Otherwise it's evil or it's bad. So I was searching kind of without searching. And one day a guy just walked up to me and handed me a CD just out of the middle of nowhere. He goes, "Hey, here, these are some really good audiobooks. I wanted to give them to you." And I'm like, who is this guy? I swear he's an angel now, looking back. And it was The Power of Now, and it was The Secret. So I listened to The Secret, part of that, but I listened to all The Power of Now. Like, I can't even count the amount of times I've listened. I listened to Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, and I loved it. And during that time, I was in such a deep depression that I couldn't even, I just couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. I thought that I had killed Jason. That was his name, because I was his enabler for so long. I just kept thinking, well, what if I wouldn't have, taken that charge for him? Or what if I would have, not done this or not done that or not paid for this for him? So it was just one of those like, woulda, coulda, shoulda, I wish this, I wish that. And I killed somebody, basically. So the guilt of feeling like I had taken someone's life was with me for about a good year, maybe 10 months to a year. So what happened was, during that time, I stopped taking my seizure medication because I have epilepsy. Stopped taking my seizure medication kind of, I guess, as a self-destructive behavior. And I was driving home from the mall one night to meet my dad at church, coincidentally. And I kind of felt one of those seizures coming on, but I didn't stop. I got off the freeway, and next thing I know, I'm floating above my car and looking down at my car. And it was a brand new Mercedes. I was in the mortgage industry at the time. This is, let me think, 2008, I believe 2008. So I was in the mortgage industry making a ton of money and floating above my car with a girl that looked just like me. And then there was an orb of light over to my left. And I was so mad. I was just like, she is an idiot. Marissa's a moron. I don't want to be her anymore. She won't listen to me. She doesn't know who you are. I was just like, I mean, I can still remember how annoyed I was. It wasn't like angry, but I just remember throwing a temper tantrum pretty much. The girl standing next to me looked just like me. She was about 3 feet taller than me. She had like swirly green eyes and she had long blonde hair. And she just kind of placed her hand on my shoulder and she says, you have too much to do. You have to go back. And I was like, yeah, go back and help people lose their homes, like raise their interest rates, get them foreclosures. The market's going to crash. She's not going to have a job. This is going to happen again. Her dad's not going to talk to her. She's going to hate her life. She's going to try and kill herself. It was like I was talking about myself as if I wasn't me. And as I turned, I still don't know what was behind me. If it was like the light that everybody talks about. I definitely didn't see the light. But I did see the paramedics pulling me out of my car that had flooded with the water from the fire hydrant. I saw myself in my black dress laying on the ground, and I had just come from the MAC counter and they'd put all this crazy wild makeup on me. And so I had like makeup dripping all down my face. So they thought I was drunk. So they were throwing me in a cop car. So I saw them doing that, and I think I went back. So I woke up in handcuffs in a cop car in front of a university. They thought I was a university, like a university student, like out drunk driving or something. And so I started hitting my head up against the window because I've when someone has a seizure, you don't handcuff them and stick them in the back of a car, so I started freaking out. And I think that probably hitting my head against the window really hard may have caused what I would consider a head injury afterwards. So I lost a lot of my memory. I couldn't remember anything for longer than like a couple minutes. And then it changed over to, I couldn't remember anything from the past. And now I know I was going through kind of like an ascension process, which is kind of what I help clients with now, which is kind of what the book is about. But it was almost like this very speedy ascension process that I was going through. But I thought it was a head injury. I thought it was losing my memory. I thought it was nausea. I thought it was depression. But yeah, that's kind of how me wondering who we are and why we're here and why I had to come back all started. So I'd say around that time, I thought I was insane. And then in 2009, I had another accident where there was no water, no fire hydrant. I knew the seizure was coming on. I was taking my medication. I pulled off the freeway and the car just kind of ran up on a curb, and I woke up in the hospital. But this time I wrote down everything that I remembered. And I met the girl again. The orb wasn't there. I watched myself almost kind of like at a 45-degree angle down at myself being pulled out of the car, put in the ambulance. But I wrote down everything that I saw at the accident. And so probably like about a month later, my super rational, common sense, now husband, then boyfriend, says, you keep talking about these accidents and you keep talking about these dreams you had. Why don't you just pull up the police reports and see if there's something on there that, I don't remember exactly what he said. So I pulled him up, and I still remember the feeling I got, like where I just like almost fell over when I saw that the witnesses that I saw the night of the fire hydrant night and the witnesses that I saw that I wrote down the second accident were wearing exactly what I had written down that they were wearing. So I guess that was kind of like my first proof that there's something outside of us. I just didn't know what it was, but it was like, oh my gosh, there's something outside of us. This is so weird. We're not just our physical selves. And because I was kind of like I need to see it to believe it. I was more into science. I went to school for accounting. When I was younger, I wanted to be an attorney. So I'm very left-brained. I'm a very left-brained person. So I meet people that I haven't seen in 20 years, and they're like, you're a spiritual counselor. Okay. Okay. But I think that it's having some left brain in there, helps me be able to relate to people a lot. And that's why I think setting up the book the way that I did in more of like a common sense way, rather than like the ethers and the this and the that and, all the woo woo stuff that confuses people a lot, which is kind of what happened to me when I started trying to read books. I was just like, this is too confusing. I don't understand anything. And then you just get frustrated and annoyed, and I'm sure you can relate to.
Yeah. And, experiences like that, there's a part in the beginning of your book where you talk to the reader about how they can assess their spiritual development, and you kind of go through these different stages. And you talked about like stage 1, the person can be the seeker or somewhat the closed skeptic, where they're kind of researching and looking for truth outside of it. But until they can really become convinced or believe that spirit is real, stage 1 could be just a lifetime, of searching and searching and trying to, find that information. And when I was going through, I'm like, okay, where am I in these stages? I'm like, yep, I've definitely been through stage 1 and stage 2, the spiritual enthusiast, which is like, everything's a sign.
I love that one. That one is so awesome. It's like, oh, the wind blew.
Right.
It's blowing leaf. My guide, it's like, people say the clock, it says 11:14. That's a sign. I'm like, 11:14? That means nothing. And they're like, yes, it does. It means to take the job. I'm like, okay, you go with that.
Right. And then you talk about people moving into stage 3, which would be more of the student, where maybe they're seeking out more information on meditation, energy healing, Reiki. They're integrating some of those practices. And then you also talk about stage 4, which is the spiritualist in search, which is kind of like the spiritual journey goes back to stage 1 all over again. And where it's kind of like, okay, it's like you've had that experience and you can't take that away from you, but then you're on this quest to search even more. And then you become back to stage 1 where it's like that skeptic,
Yeah. And the thing is I watch so many people get stuck in 3. I live in a town where I'm down the street from it's a huge yoga community. And so it's kind of like the Sedona of California, for those people that don't know Sedona, it's just a very spiritual town. But so everyone's kind of either very spiritual here or very not. And so here you see a lot of people who are very stuck in, while I was in phase 2, I saw 11:14 on the clock 4 times. So numbers are my thing, and I'm going to stay with numbers, and those are going to be my signs forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So they get books on numbers, and that's great, and that's wonderful. But then they miss out on the other signs that they're receiving. They're missing out on the song that keeps popping into their head because they have clairaudience, or they miss out on the chills that they get, because they can feel energy, because they get really stuck on kind of one modality of connecting with the other side or receiving signs, or, however you want to put it. It's also when people join groups and they're kind of like my dad at the beginning, my dad's the closed-minded Christian that was like, no, don't tell me anything. Because if you tell me one thing that's going to convince me that my beliefs are not true, then I'm going to fall out of stage 2. And nothing's going to be spirit. I'm going to lose all my beliefs altogether. And I think that the world right now, we all need to push through 3 to go to 4. You said you wonder what you are. You're 4. You're willing to ask those questions. You're willing to break your entire paradigm and your belief system and go back to 1 and be a skeptic again, even though it's a frustrating stage, Right. And everyone wants to be in 2 because 2 is awesome. 2 is like everything is spirit, but 3 is fun to be in. But yeah, I love the stages. My first teacher taught me those 4 stages, but they weren't that. I sat down to write down the stages that he taught me, and those came through channeled from my higher self. And when I got done writing that, I was like, whoa, that is really cool. I'm like, this has got to go in the book. So I'm really glad that they had that in there. So.
Yeah. And you talk in your book about the soul house and how there are 7 rooms of this soul house. And that is really how the book is broken up into these 7 rooms, 7 chapters. So can you talk a little bit about what you consider to be the soul house?
Yeah. Actually, well, the one thing that I guess people always say, what do you do? And I say, I don't know what I do. I motivate people. I get people excited. I teach them about their abilities. But I'd say my strongest is my curious nature. So I call myself an investigative clairvoyant, which is what I wanted my radio show to be. But they said, no, then everyone's going to be calling you to find their dog or their keys or whatever. So I said, okay, but I see stuff. And I started seeing almost like a little carousel in the middle of everybody's head. So if you can kind of imagine like those, what were they, like tilt-a-whirl? The ride when you go to the fair and like you stick to the wall, it starts spinning and you stick to the wall. Yeah. I kind of see the soul house almost like that, where it's just this thing kind of spinning in the middle of our head. And then there's a little bulb above it. And I believe that to be a layer of our higher self. I see everybody kind of in like 9 layers and like multidimensionally. Like when I call in the guides, I'll see Christ, I'll see Jesus, and then I'll see, the man Jesus, and I see Yeshua. So I see all these different layers. So the soul house, rather than taking people through the different layers of themselves, which I believe a lot of ascension coaches are doing, which is great, we're getting to know ourselves. I felt it was more important to teach people the different perspectives that they're seeing life from on that little tilt-a-whirl, which window are you looking out of? Which ride are you on? Because if I'm looking at something from the first room, which is the physical perspective, I've got all my chakras there. I've got all the layers of my aura. I've got my connection to source above me. I've got everything that I need in room 1 because that's what our creator self designed it for. Basically to be like a duplicate or a creation. It's like a movie theater. Go in there, you're in your little movie theater and you're living in this reality that was created for you by your creator self that's standing outside watching you in the soul house, bumping into walls like a little bumper car. And you go, what's going on? But then when people have their spiritual awakening and they realize that there's more than that first room, the one next to it's the emotional room. And that's where I kind of had my meltdown when I realized that I was more than my physical body, because then you kind of get pushed into that emotional room. And that emotional room is where we have shoved everything that we don't want to deal with. It's like, I used to kid around and say that, I have a couple of family members that I married into that, all they talk about is food, weather, the car, sports. They keep it very, very, very non-emotional because there's those people that just like, they lose it. You get them a little tiny emotional. Do you know anybody like that where it's like, they just get a little bit emotional and they're like, Rah! They freak out. And that's because their emotional room is filled with a bunch of stuff that they haven't dealt with from childhood all the way on. And when we get into spirituality, it all depends on that room, which plane or where we end up when we start tuning into spirit. So it's very important that we clear kind of that space and the next room before we start tuning into, I used to teach mediumship and I stopped because people thought the goal was to talk to a spirit. And they'd be talking to like the grossest stuff. I'd be like, oh my gosh, no, stop talking to that. And then they'd be like, but then I won't see orbs in my pictures anymore. Or I won't, because they were in phase 2. They wanted to still believe that there was something there, but they were talking to like, a dead guy that didn't do very good things when he was here, and they're bringing that energy around their children and stuff like that. So I kind of stopped teaching mediumship because of that, but then started back up teaching it, but more in connecting with the creator self of the individual rather than the little aspect of them within their own soul house, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I explained that right, but yeah.
And then do you want to continue to go through just kind of the different layers?
Yeah, I was wondering if you wanted me to go through them. So so the third room would be what we would consider is who I met that night in the accident. The third room is I call it the mental body. And the mental body is not to be confused with the intellectual mind. The intellectual mind, our subconscious mind. I'm trained in lots of different subconscious reprogramming modalities, and I was really actually disappointed when I found that it was only clearing room 1. It wasn't clearing all the other rooms when I was doing this, whereas I thought I was going up to like, the light of all existence, and I was, clearing out everything, all of their ancestral stuff. But really what I was doing was just kind of unplugging stuff, little programs within their first room when reprogramming the subconscious mind. So the third room is more like, if anybody ever sees like a crowned Jesus in front of them, or or they see a version of themselves. A lot of people see a version of themselves as kind of like a hologram standing in front of them with a crown on. They usually have a crown on, I've found, or like a little thing of flowers around their head or something, depending on which level of consciousness they're at that time when they're tuning into themselves. But I call that kind of like our blueprint. And that blueprint of who we are, I believe, is like if we were going to play a video game, I'd be like, okay, so I'm going to create this character called Marisa, and I'm going to create like a perfect template of what I want her to become. And I'm going to put my mind or spirit inside Marisa. And then about 5 feet in front of her, I'm going to put this perfect version of her that's going to stand there that she can kind of follow like an internal GPS system. The only problem is the second room and all of our emotions block us from that. So our higher self could be like, hey, over here, hello, take that job, and we're reading it as, don't take that job. Last time you took a job, you got fired and you look like an idiot. Or, our logical mind could be like, this doesn't compute. This is not, nope, can't do this, can't do that, won't make enough money. So it's really important to kind of either bypass the second room completely to go to the third room, which is what I teach in the book, how to just go in and tune into what I call the divine mind. And also just because I'm one of those that doesn't believe that we should have to live through every single emotion that we've shoved in that room. I spent a good 12 years using chemicals to mask that room, mask myself from that room. And so when I started in my spiritual development, it was like, people call it a healing crisis, or I think they call it a healing crisis. Where you just or the dark night of the soul, where you just lose your mind. I've got this funny picture that somebody sent me one time on Facebook where it's like, what people think spiritual awakening is. And it's this girl like levitating, meditating above a pond. And then it's like, what spiritual awakening really is. And it's like a girl with all her mascara, like dripping down her face, screaming, holding the side of her head, like screaming, like she's losing her mind, because that's usually how I meet people. They're usually at that stage going, because they're going crazy, because what's happening is they're trying to tune into these other rooms by doing meditation, but they're either blocked by their second room. They're maybe tuning into their third room, but their mind has so many beliefs in it about, that being evil. So they're seeing their higher self show up as like a demon or with red eyes, or I used to see mine with red eyes. And it used to freak me out. So a lot of people, and that's still just within the confines of our mind. And then the fourth room would be the astral plane, which is where most people gravitate towards. And I see it as kind of being right above room one. And so we kind of go into the astral plane, and a lot of kids exist solely in that room. I've found they're not grounded at all in room one. They're always in that room. And that's why they have imaginary friends, and they have, quote unquote, imaginary friends. And that's where our light bodies are. And that's where kind of what we would call, like the different versions of heaven and heaven and hell and all the different, it's the Matrix, basically. It's kind of like that movie, The Matrix, or whatever. There's all these different realities in there. And it's what we think it is, basically. And a lot of people will think that is the ultimate. They're like, I'm ascended. I've been Christed. I'm a Buddhic plane person, or, like I'm completely enlightened. And they're the most arrogant, egotistical person on the planet. You're like, smack, 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 wake up, and they're connecting with spirits that aren't that good, or they're connecting with things that are saying that they're, Jesus, or they're saying that they're Mother Mary, when really it's just a dead person, projecting an image of one of those beings into their field. And those are a lot of the people that will go into business as mediums and as intuitives and stuff. And I think it's a very toxic room if we're not careful. So in the book, I tried to make sure to bring it across to people that we need to get out of the soul house first, because that's our created reality. Get into our creator self. And then if we want to be a medium, then connect in with other souls or other beings, so that we're not shaded by our own past lives. All of our past lives are in there. Oh gosh, I could go on and on and on about the fourth room, but there's 56 planes within that fourth room. And within the third room, there's 12. Within the second room, there's 12. And within the fifth room, there's 7 planes, and that's like the God room. And that's where I see, for me, when I go into my room, I always see, what's the lion's name from that movie? Is it Aslan?
Oh,
Aslan. It's that movie. I can't remember what it's called. It's oh gosh, people right now are like screaming it because they know what I'm talking about. But it's a big, huge lion, and I see that kind of as Christ, the Holy Spirit. It's our created version of God that's in that fifth room. And a lot of people think that we'll ultimately end up there. When I connect in, like my brother-in-law, I don't want to cry, so I won't talk about it too much, but my brother-in-law just passed away a week and a half ago. And he was only 34. And so now I'm majorly on a mission to, sorry, I'm going to cry now.
It's okay.
His name was Brian. And so he's been taking me through his soul house. And at his funeral, he was showing me, look, my violet flame is still there. It needs to be taken. It needs to be put out. I mean, he's giving me all this information about the other side. And of course, you know me, I need to be right. My coffee cup says Mrs. Always Right. I've got these cups. My husband, I got Mr. Right. And then mine says Mrs. Always Right. You know, I'm drinking out of it right now. But it's funny because I've just kind of went back into, I guess it would be what it'd be back into the stage where I'm willing to ask those questions that are going to totally either prove my book wrong, prove everything wrong. But so far, so good, you know, what he's shown me from the other side. But it's amazing to me what he's shown me about the fifth room. The fifth room is where I kind of thought in the book, oh, that's where God is. That's where our God self is. So we are God in there. And had I known that at the time, you know, what I wrote was correct, but I want to write a whole nother book on just becoming that God self in that room, because that's where we become like a star in that room. He says in this room, he said, most people are either the North Star or Cassiopeia, or they're, who's the guy? I think of my stepdaughter. She goes, "You mean Hercules? Hercules? Yeah. Don't you mean Hercules? Yeah, Hercules." But we're also a star in that room, and I'm learning a lot more about that. And me being the investigative clairvoyant, I'm like every day calling up my friends. Okay, you guys want to channel? Let's channel. Okay, let's channel. Let's ask Brian more questions. You know, so we've been asking him questions about stuff from the other side. And I believe that was part of kind of his purpose, even though I'd way rather have him here with us. Sure. So the fifth room is amazing. And then the sixth room, and that's also where a lot of our guides are too. The sixth room, all I see it as is a torus. You know what a torus is, right? What's the best way to describe a torus? Electromagnetic field. Looks like a little grid to me. If anyone's seen the movie The Matrix, it kind of just looks like all those numbers coming down on the screen. The movie with Keanu Reeves, you know,
Yeah.
So to me, it just looks like a computer program. And I can go into that room when I'm doing healings on people and ask to see the root source of the code of their Lyme's disease. And then I can go in and I can pull in the opposite energy and cancel it out into a 0. And their Lyme's disease will go away, or all their symptoms of it will go away. I mean, not every single time, but, you know, it's happened several times. And then same with cancers and stuff like that. So that's when I teach people how to heal. I usually teach them how to get into that room and kind of manipulate the codes within people that create us into who we are. So if you can kind of imagine you are your creator self, so you're like this person that has personality, you're an individualized piece of God, and you go, okay, I'm going to build this house, and I'm going to take a little piece of my heart, and that's light, and I'm going to shine it through into that house, and then I'm going to take my brain, like a movie reel, you know, and I'm going to kind of shine that light through my brain to create a being that's going to go into that sixth room. So it's kind of like a programmed avatar, like a video game programmed avatar that's in our soul house, but it gets programmed in that room. I don't see archangels as people on horses with swords and shields. I see them as like lightning bolts. So I'll see as, say, you have Ariel, like as you pass through that room, I see you kind of like food coloring, kind of being dropped into your essence of that angel. And so then as you pass into the fifth room, then you're your God self, but you're tinted with a little bit of angelic DNA. And that kind of comes from that sixth room. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we just have different coding, or say you have Andromeda, you have a drop of Andromeda in there. And so you're going to have all the consciousness within you from Andromeda. And Andromeda to me, it seems like a created reality within. But me and my dad just finished writing my second book. We call it The Big House and the Little House, or The Big Doll House and the Little Doll House. And Andromeda to me is part of the big doll house. And then as dolls, we've created another dollhouse within that dollhouse, and that would be like the astral plane. But we get tinted with different star systems. So some people will say, "Oh, I'm a Pleiadian," or "I'm an Arcturian." They may be, or they may just be programmed with the consciousness from that planet or star system, because it carries the certain knowledge that they need. That if we never leave the first room, we never get past that emotional room of where we see demons, but that are really our emotions, then we never really get to tune into that amazing, other star systems and cosmic consciousness and all of that we can find in that sixth room. It's also where the 0 point is, which I talk about in the book a lot, and I attune people to the 0 point so they can use it as a means to heal themselves and do lots of fun stuff with the 0 point. The seventh room is just, to me, pure light. I'm certified in theta healing. I took a lot of classes in theta healing to try and heal myself so I could get pregnant. And in that, they teach about the different planes of consciousness. And I was always so annoyed because I never felt like I was really at the creator. I felt like I was like at like a created creator or a fake creator or something like that. I'm always such a skeptic. So I told what I call guides, but it's really just my creator self and other beings outside of my soul house. I told them, okay, guys, I need a way to know 100% for sure that I am in my heart space and I am in a place where I can, command my subconscious mind to do things. And I'm not at risk of being, in the lower astral plane where I'm being tricked by beings and I'm going to ruin my life. I had so much fear in the beginning. And they said, oh, easy. Go into this seventh room where you're pure light, where you're just awareness. I call it the GoPro video camera, where we're just awareness. Go into that seventh room and then go into the creation room. And the creation room, everybody has it. It's right above our head in our crown chakra. And it's a room basically with a window right in front of us. And when I tell people about it, they go, "Oh my gosh, I've seen that room. It's crazy." But there's a window right in front of us and a little door to the right. And when that door opens, it leads out to source, or out into space, basically, which is it's a technique that I teach people how to get rid of, say, earthbound spirits or energies or entities that are in their field. There's a little drain in the floor, which I very recently learned was the cisterna magna. There's no way in the world I could have known that word. So I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, the cisterna magna is the hole at the bottom of our skull that connects to our spine. Right there at the top of our spine. I was like, oh my gosh, we're in the center of our head in the creation room. Like, whereas I see it as we're above our head. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So in the creation room, all the exercises that I teach, because I also have a little app that I launched where I have a bunch of meditations and stuff like that. I'll tell people to flush down their emotions down that drain, or to zero out their emotions, or to call forward anything that's in their field in that creation room. So I wanted to put the creation room at the very beginning of the book so that people could get into that, do all the exercises from the heart, because it took me forever to get into the heart. And I'm sure you've heard that all the time. People are always like, get into the heart, get into the heart. You hear that a lot in the in the spiritual world. And I was always like, I can't get into my freaking heart. I'm not in my heart. I know it. I'm in my mind thinking that I'm in my heart. So the exercises that I put in the book are like surefire ways to know that you are in your heart space. You are your consciousness, your awareness. And from there, we can create anything. We can, we really can. We really can. We can say, I want $1 million right now. And if we really honestly didn't have any beliefs in any of the other rooms in our house that were blocking us, like $1 million would appear in front of us. Kind of like that movie, The Matrix, where he starts dodging bullets and stuff. I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't been able to materialize $1 million in front of me, but
me either.
I know, right? But I materialized Hay House.
Right.
My dad and I went, let's try this. Let's pull Hay House into, I have an exercise called the snow globe. Let's pull Hay House into the snow globe and see what happens. And the next day, my agent, Bill Gladstone, talked to Patty Gift over at Hay House, and she goes, hey, that girl that you were telling us about, we want to meet with her. But he hadn't talked to her forever about us. So got me to where I am right now, which is good enough for me.
Yeah. And when you talk about the snow globe, I'll let our listeners know that that's also an exercise that you offer and teach people to do. And another one that I just wanted to talk about, one of the exercises that you have in the book, it's actually in the God Room chapter. It's aligning your thought spot and God spot. And I don't know if it was actually in this chapter or in a few of the other ones when you're talking about that point of zero, but you also mentioned the pineal gland. That there's a way to be able to get, when you're kind of aligning with this energy, to be able to clear the pineal gland. I know you mentioned something where you're not using drugs or anything like that to do it, but this is a natural way to get to that point, and how people can really have these miraculous moments of that feeling and sensation. So can you talk a little bit about the pineal gland and what you mean by connecting the thought spot, the God spot, and actually accessing that in the brain?
Absolutely. Yes. That's my favorite subject in the whole book. I love it. I love it. And I was so happy that they let me keep it in there, because I'd written it and it was so complicated the way I wrote it. And the editors at Hay House were so amazing in kind of simplifying my 80 pages down to something that was a little bit more understandable, because the way I see it is I don't see people as people. Like if I was to look at you, I'd see you, and then I would see you're human in a little snow globe, maybe kind of down in the, like a little elevator. Yours is up like near your throat. So that means you've ascended up to, like, say your fifth level, which is pretty high. And I call that the God spot. And then we have our thought spot, which is where our soul always is, that programmed piece of us. And the way I see it is we just continue living these lives, playing this quote unquote game, learning things and growing and expanding. And each lifetime, say my daughter, like, they talk about the rainbow kids and stuff. They come in and their spot is already up in their, near their pineal gland, up in the middle of their head. So they're not down in the yucky trenches of the emotional and mental body down below our rib cage, down in those lower chakra areas. So in that exercise, I teach people how to bring their spot where they're viewing life from up to where their soul is, and merge those two together in a very, very simple way. And it works. It works. The pineal gland, I don't read, and because I don't want to like regurgitate people's stuff. I wish I could read because I'd sound more educated. I tell people, I say, I'm like Columbus. I'm like, I found land. And it's like, really the Native Americans were like already here, and they'd already mapped out the entire, land and everything. And I feel like I'm discovering something new, and really, Greg Braden's already talking about it, or Joe Dispenza, or, some other amazing author already talks about it. But for me, the pineal gland to me seems like the center of that ride that I was talking about. It's like a little stick that connects to the little ball above that tilt-a-whirl ride. And I feel like what happens is the stick between our consciousness that we send down into our soul house, that's supposed to be sending, I just kind of imagine like a little speaker, like a Bluetooth speaker, kind of playing frequencies and like, do this and do that and blah, 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 kind of sending it down through the pineal gland into the little stick, so that it becomes a part of our reality in that ride. There's ways where it gets calcified. And I don't know if I fully believe all the stuff that a lot of my friends will be like GMOs, and, they'll talk about all the different reasons why the pineal gland gets calcified. I think honestly that the reason why we can't see is because a lot of people would be absolutely insane if they didn't see. I think there would be a lot more schizophrenic people. I think there would be a lot more people that were extremely, just really honestly, full-fledged crazy, because of the fact that we are not an enlightened society, in that we don't know really the difference between the ego, the emotional body, and our spirit yet. But as the world is being elevated by all these amazing teachers coming out and teaching us all this stuff, if we can decalcify the pineal gland and make this connection between that consciousness and us, then that becomes our eyes as opposed to our eyeballs. I was nursing my son, this is like 3 months ago. He's 8 months now. So at 6 months, he was like, I don't want to nurse anymore. I'm too good for that. But so it must have been about 3 or 4 months ago. I'm nursing him, and I'm sitting there looking at him, and I'm going like, I wonder if I can tune into your higher self. I try not to tune into my kids' energy because I don't want to get my emotions in their field. But it's kind of almost impossible since their vibrations are so high. But I hear, hey, Mom, look at how I see the world. And it was crazy because he took me into his higher self. And all of a sudden I was standing above both of us, looking down this tube of light that was going straight down through his occiput, straight through the pineal gland, which then kind of became like a movie screen almost. And I was looking through a lens, and I could see like my face, looking through the lens at him. And he says, I don't use my eyeballs yet. And I thought, that's interesting. And I haven't done any research on it. In fact, I totally forgot about that until just now. But it was interesting because it was basically like a little upside down periscope from like the submarines use, but it was the real self, or the creator self, out there looking down through him, through the pineal gland, viewing life through that. And then, as we grow up, the world programs us, and that shuts down. Pineal gland kind of loses its purpose, and we start using our eyeballs to view life. But I always tell people, so technically, I guess we're standing upside down and flipped because our eyeballs see flipped and upside down because they're like mirrors, I guess. Somebody was talking about, isn't that true? Where we see we see flipped right. And upside down. So technically we're all standing on the ceiling right now, I guess. It kind of puts into perspective, that we just, we are real, but we're not real. That's the initial name of the book, was called I Don't Feel Real, is what it was called. And then we switched it over to Attunement about 3 weeks before it was done. So.
And a part in that, there was a part in your book too, where you are talking about the pineal gland, and you kind of mention about, maybe some people that try to access that by taking, hallucinogens, and that's really not the God way to get there. So, and that those probably aren't the words exactly. I'm kind of paraphrasing the way that I interpreted that. But what's your thought on that, or what are you like? Do you feel like that's not the best way, even though like hallucinogens and stuff like that have been used in so many different cultures and so many spiritual ceremonies, and actually allow people to witness and have that experience that they are more than themselves, as opposed to, I don't know. I
like
think
DMT and stuff like that. I have, the only one that I personally have experienced clients that have come in to see me was ayahuasca. And I think that there's some people that have had amazing experiences with that. They call it like plant medicine. I think some people have had amazing experiences if there was somebody that can hold a space where they pull that person out of their soul house, into their creator self. And I think that there are, professionals that can do that. But there was like a string of maybe 40 or 50 people that were coming in to see me for a while, where they would just have these fake higher selves. Their life was falling apart. Their husbands were becoming alcoholics all of a sudden after not drinking for 10 years, or they were starting to do drugs. And it was because what happened was, and it wasn't necessarily the ayahuasca or the drug, it was the pulling them into that second room. You're pulling them out of that first room, giving them an experience in one of the other rooms, showing them, look, there's other realities, kind of like my out of body experience. But then I think it's just kind of like the lack of maybe follow-up or coaching afterwards to kind of continue to see it without having to use that as a means to. I did drugs for X amount of years, so I can't say don't do that, because I don't know what's right and what's wrong. But for me, I always tell people, if they go, should I do this? I go, you know what? Get into your heart space, pull it into your heart. If you expand, your heart's not going to lie. Make sure you're in your heart, you're in your creator self, you're in your creator room. Everything's all clear, all of your perceptions. And if you feel that you're expanded with, the idea of doing plant medicine to expand your consciousness or your awareness, then, do it. And I've never had anybody have themselves expand from that after that, because once you can get into that state that this book is hopefully getting people into, you don't need that. In fact, I had a lady write to me the other day, and she posted on my Facebook, and she goes, I've never done drugs, but I swear to God, I'm on drugs right now. She's like, my coffee cup is talking to me, because I have that exercise in the book about talking to your hairdryer, where I want to teach people, that our spirit guides aren't people. We're not people. We're just energy, but we're inside people. So we want to see a spirit guide or an angel. We want to see it as a man with wings, or a fairy, like a little girl with wings or whatever. So we personify things. So she says her coffee cup was saying, I'm tired. You use me too much. She said she heard that coming from her cup when she was sitting at work. So she goes to take a picture of it and post it on my wall. And she says she heard it go, oh, yay, now I'm going to be famous. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm creating a bunch of schizophrenic people. But I believe, honestly, that everybody, we come in like Parker, my son, he's in a state right now where he can see. He is spirit. He can see, he can experience everything. And it's just, I believe emotions are what kill. Emotions are the root of all disease. Emotions are the root of unprocessed emotions, are the root of everything. And that's why the snow globe is so good, because it gives people that are not clairvoyant or have any abilities, the ability to actually see their energy and see if they have stuff in their field just by imagining that they're a snow globe. In fact, that's an entire book that I wrote, which is how I ended up over at Hay House. And my second book is actually the snow globe. So it's like a whole book dedicated to the snow globe. But yeah, my opinion is, I always tell people, I used to say, don't do it. Don't do the drugs. But now it's more of like everyone has their own experience. I'm not going to be a control freak spiritual counselor, but in my experience, people have ended up with weird attachments and stuff. And I think that I came to the conclusion that it's all based off of who is leading you through that, and who's holding the space. The same as like my classes, I make sure to hold space so that everybody's in a clear creation room, like a created creation room. So when we're doing meditations, people don't leave drained because somebody else is plugging into them, taking their energy, or, transferring energy when we're online meditating together with 200 people,
Right.
So yeah.
Well, I know we really only touched upon a very small portion of your book, Attunement, but you do have a great website called Discover Intuition. You have your own radio show on Hay House Radio.
Yeah.
So why don't you let the listeners know a little bit about what they can find through discoverintuition.com. I would definitely recommend to go and read the book Attunement to get a little more background and knowledge on the exercises that Marisa was talking about that you can do to have this connection, finding your God spot and your thought spot. So that's what the book is going to be really helpful for. But yeah, let people know what they can find over at your website.
My website, well, first of all, the book, and you can go on to my Facebook page, and I'm still trying to make that transition from my personal one to my business one that I think kind of everybody goes through. It's like, oh no, I'm at my limit. Now I need to switch over to the business one. Oh, it's very hard. But I try to post on both pages. I try to remember, but people are posting as they're opening their book. And just by ordering the book, I've noticed that people's conscious awareness gets taken into their little GoPro video camera. So they just by ordering it with that intention, they become their awareness. It's like, whoa. So I've been kind of watching as a case study, as people are ordering this. And then I've been having people post first pictures, and now they're doing videos as they're opening up the book. And then underneath it all, right, oh my gosh, I just saw your energy get unzipped. You got out of your etheric body. You jumped into your mental body. Your mental body ascended up three layers. Your pineal gland opened up. It's like your third eye opened and you're standing on top of your head. So it's interesting, but everybody's completely different. So I've got the book attuned for each density. And I know that we didn't go into densities, but for all 8 densities of where we could be in our spiritual development, I have a different templated book that's basically attuned, kind of like, when they touch it, the frequency of it, it's going to bring them into alignment with themselves. And then in the book, there's an exercise where they actually write their name in, like, I am my awareness, I'm my higher self, and then they sign it. It's page 31. So if you do nothing else, order the book and go in and sign page 31. Because 31, it's a 3-day exercise, but we found that as soon as you sign the book, and this was at my book signing, as soon as the book is signed, all this crazy cool stuff starts happening to people. It was like, I saw one of the girls turn into Vega, and I was like, what is Vega? And we looked it up, and it's a star. So yeah, page 31 is the first attunement in the book, and it's actually you attuning yourself to yourself. But sorry to get off track, but yeah, so I've got a new website. It's marisamoris.com, but discoverintuition.com will lead you to it. I've got a new app we just launched yesterday, which is awesome. It's got bite-sized snippets. It's called Tuned In. The address for it'll be on my website, but it's tunedin.vhx.tv. I'm sure by the time this airs, we'll have a domain name for it. But we've got like 2-minute meditations, 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute, 45-minute, an hour. And then we've got little lessons, actual attunements, connect with your loved one on the other side, anywhere from mediumship to full-blown ascension, to just, clearing off your husband's negative energy before he gets home from work, so everyone doesn't get all crazy when he gets home, or wife, I need to be fair, but yeah, so my website, if you order my book, then you go to marisamoris.com and you click on more information right at the top, and you can type in your receipt number and you get my audiobook that was published called The Snow Globe. You get a Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which talks about developing your intuition, connecting with your higher self. And then you also get a Skeptic's Guide to your spiritual credit score, which is so much fun. I'm not even sure if the credit score got left in this book. I think it's in the second one. I'm combining them now, but the spiritual credit score is a lot of fun.
Neat. Wonderful. Yeah, I'm
on
those
for free.
Yeah, I see your Tuned In VHX TV thing. That is really cool. Very neat.
It's so fun. It's so fun. I've had so much fun because I don't watch myself. And when I watch myself, I'm like, dang, I can't believe that came out of my mouth. I said that word. I don't even know what that means. I'm sitting here like looking stuff up because I think we didn't mention that I'm a trance channel. We didn't mention that at the beginning of it.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I'm full blown trance. So I'm out, and if I'm not with someone, and the Hay House learned that the other day, they gave me Facebook Hay House Live. I woke up and I was like Tom Cruise in Risky Business, when he's sliding through. I was like, I'm in Hay House, whoosh, sliding around. I got locked into Hay House. Nobody knew I was back there, and I was like channeling for like 2 hours on Hay House Live. I was supposed to be on there for like 15 minutes, but I was in trance and I didn't have a battery or anybody there with me to snap me out of it. So all of a sudden I like wake up and I'm like, where am I? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm on Hay House Live. So I walk out, I'm like, oh my God, I'm here alone. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm in Hay House, like sliding around. Then I was like, oh no, I'm in Hay House. I got to get out of here. So luckily I found an emergency exit door that had one of those like latch releases. And I got out of there. So it was kind of funny, but my guides were probably laughing really hard at me at that moment in time.
Well, Marisa, thank you so much for being a guest on the Path 11 podcast. You have great energy. I really enjoyed the book. I am really looking forward personally to doing some of the attunements myself. And I practiced a little bit of the thought and God spot, but more as I was reading it. But I'm going to really take that more into like a deeper meditation to really feel it. And you've given me a lot of tools just through your book alone. So I'm excited to venture out a little bit more into your own radio show and looking at all these great things that you have. So thank you so much again for being on our show.
Yeah, you're welcome. And there is a God spot, thought spot exercise in Tuned In that I actually lead everybody through it. And today I'm actually recording similar exercises to the book until we can get the real ones produced. But I'm going to have very similar ones that are going to be in the app that people can kind of follow along instead of reading. Okay, step 1, get into this. Okay, step 2. It's kind of hard to meditate when you're trying to read, So,
right, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm going to put those exercises into videos, actually doing that today, and going to put those into the app. So yeah, and it's free for the first 3 or 5 days, and then it's very affordable. It's only $25. So anyways, thank you so much. It was so much fun talking to you.
If you want more information about our films, visit our website, path11productions.com, to purchase DVDs or to rent and stream each film. You can also find our trilogy of films on iTunes, Amazon Prime, and Gaia.com. You can still use our smartphone app for both Android and iPhones. Just search for Path 11 in the Google Play App Store, or if on an iPhone, look for Path 11 in the iOS App Store. Catch you next time.